Hello. We are without Leonard this week. He is feeling ill, and so it's up to me to host the show. This will be, I think, my second or third hosting of the show, so bear with me. I will try and keep you entertained. As our special guest this week, we have Mark Searby to join me and for a talk of video, movies, TV, Black Friday, and the week in geek happenings. So if you have anything, please, any questions, please post it in the Q&A online on the YouTube channel, and we will answer your questions. We've seen a bunch of the recent movies. If you have any questions for Mark, as in, is this movie worth seeing? Please feel free to post it. We'd love to talk to you about it. But the first question of the show is more related to movies and geek culture. So the question is whether or not, and I'm going to hand this over to Mark to kind of flush it out in a second, but the question is does having a panel or some pre-show at San Diego Comic-Con or some of the other conventions, does it help promote the movie? And as I've queued it all up for you, Mark.
Thanks, Alyssa. Yeah, that's very nice. Thank you for the intro as well. First off, I've got to apologize for my kind of, I don't know if you can see it, my like flock of seagulls haircut. It's kind of like going through in the middle. It's some sort of flock of seagulls / Logan Wolverine thing going on. I don't know what's happening. So apologies for everybody thinking what's happening with his hair. I will get it cut this week. I will, honestly. It's a good question. You know, does having a presence at San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con for that matter influence people to go and see films more than just sitting there and watching the trailer? The thing is, I think there's a couple of answers for this. I think if you're Marvel turn up and they do this huge show, don't they? I mean, they just go with it. They just wow you with everything. The thing is, they're preaching to the choir anyway, really, because, you know, that's what we're doing there. That's why we love it so much. You know, we're going to go and see these Marvel films, and they come out with all these big spectaculars, and you turn up and you say, well, I was already going to see it. Now I'm even more excited. So Marvel have kind of got it down anyway. That's not a problem. I think it's the other studios that have got a kind of on that boundary. I mean, I remember 2 years ago, Open Road had an hour's panel and everybody turned up. It was first thing in the morning and nobody knew who Open Road was. They were like, who are these people? What do they do? And things like that. And then they turned up and there was like Bill Murray came out, and I think The Rock came out, and people like that. So this is a studio who are going about and just putting out these little films, but with these big stars in. And obviously something like the film that Bill Murray was in, which Rock the Casbah, it was called. A very small film, didn't have a big push. But when you see somebody like Bill Murray turning up at San Diego Comic-Con and, you know, doing his Bill Murray-ness of high-fiving everybody, I think it kind of gets you more interested in it, because you think, hey, I saw him live and he was really fun. And the trailer that they showed, or the little clip that they showed, makes it look really fun. I mean, we all know how trailers can lie to us anyway and show us the best bits. But when you have a film that isn't comic related or anything else like that, it's a very difficult sell at Comic-Con, and I think that's the problem that some of these studios are trying to get over. But when you fly in, you know, Bill Murray, The Rock, when you fly in Matthew McConaughey and Christopher Nolan to promote Interstellar, all of a sudden it stops being a Comic-Con and it becomes a film show, because they've got to sell it elsewhere. And I think that's possibly a little bit of a surprise there, because there's always one or two that we know of that turn up to San Diego and you're not sure who it is. But then, you know, these whispers go around, oh yeah, McConaughey might be here. And you think, why would McConaughey come to San Diego Comic-Con? It seems pointless. And then he does. And all of a sudden, as I said before, it kind of makes you want to see the film more, because you're there in the room, seeing that panel and thinking, okay, I wasn't interested in it before, now I am. the flip side to that coin, and you might be able to help with this, Alyssa, possibly, is they have these panels for films which are possibly comic or book related, and yet these are small books, small comics, and they've made them into films. Prime example is Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. They had a panel for that last year at Comic-Con. It was kind of like an hour with Matt Smith, just about, because it was that film and then some other sci-fi film he was in. And I was there. I sat through it and just thought, this looks absolutely terrible. And everybody on that panel doesn't sell it to me at all. I mean, none of them did. You know, I mean, you've got Lily James there, who I really like. She's great in Cinderella, but she was in it and she looked terrible. And then there was that sci-fi film with Matt Smith in where nobody knew what was happening. And I don't know what's happened to that film either. What is it? If somebody knows what's happened to that Matt Smith sci-fi film, if they could let us know, that'd be great, because that was the only thing I ever heard about it. I never saw it again. And I think that's part of the problem, is that you've got to get that panel right. You've got to get that wow factor right. If you are not a Comic-Con, if you're not a comic franchise, basically, you know, I mean, it's fine if you're Fast and the Furious. Oh no. What's happened now, Alyssa?
To let everybody know that Leonard is chiming in on the Q&A.
Oh, no.
He said patient zero. I think that was directed at your previous
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Yeah.
In 2015. And the director tweeted that it's due the beginning of next year. I'm not sure what. So
yeah.
Leonard, you're welcome to jump in. You have the link. I'm going to try and do a screen share for everybody just to give you an idea of what Leonard looks like, when it's rather comical.
It's rather comical, but also R-rated as well. I think that's the thing. Not for nudity, but for horror. I mean, I just mentioned Zombies, and he does kind of look like The Walking Dead, to be honest. So if that picture is shared, be prepared.
Back to your first point.
Yeah.
The panel that interested me this last year, that I was really kind of very surprised that it showed up, was the Snowden panel. With, I forget the name of the director, a famous director. Oliver Stone, which was which did, as you said, pique my interest to go see Snowden, which I normally would not have seen, would not have been interested in even seeing, because it doesn't seem like there's enough there that would really interest me.
Yeah. To
see that. So I'm wondering what will happen next year in terms of those kinds of
it's a film that's on the periphery of yours and our eyes sort of interest, but you kind of think it's not going to be at Comic-Con. You kind of think, okay, I'm going to have to look for this elsewhere. But as you said, you know, Snowden was there. The year before was obviously Rock the Casbah. The year before was Interstellar. So there are all these films turning up, and you kind of think, why are they here? But then they do something like that. As you said, Alyssa, you know, Snowden, you're interested in it. But because you saw something, and because, I mean, let's face it, Oliver Stone can sell ice to Eskimos. He's that good a talker. It kind of piques your interest a bit more. So I think if you've got somebody who's very charismatic and can carry that completely. I mean, I sat through the Hateful Eight panel 2 years ago, and it was fascinating. You know, Tarantino talking about filming on real film, you know, on 70mm. I mean, I was gone. I was like that. I was completely focused. Anybody else could have left. It was so fascinating. But then you have somebody like, and I sorry I keep picking on him, but he is a bit of a, you know, he's a bit of a wet blanket. Matt Smith seems to struggle to sell films. I know he was great in Doctor Who, but he is not a film star. And I think that's part of it, is when you have somebody turn up to a panel and they just sit and then they go, yeah, it was really fun making this film because we got 6 months in Hawaii. And you think, well, what good's that? I'm not in Hawaii. I need to, you know, I want to feel connection. When you have somebody like Ryan Reynolds turning up to sell Deadpool, I mean, that's the great panel, isn't it? Ryan Reynolds is charismatic. He's fun. He's good looking, you know. So it's all of these things. And even the director who was sat next to him, granted, he was interesting and whatever else, But he was more interesting because Ryan Reynolds was there laughing and joking with him. So I think it does come down to who you have on these panels. And I think that's what the studios have really got to look for. I mean, that panel that I was talking about with The Rock, and, you know, that was Hercules. That was it. I mean, he's the main guy in it. There's Ian McShane in it as well. How do you sell Hercules? Well, here's how you do it. You get The Rock to walk from the back of Hall H all the way through it, high-fiving everybody and obviously doing all of his wrestling stuff. Guess what? He sells the film. He's a natural seller. And that's what I think that's what these studios have got to work out, these smaller studios. Get the natural charisma from the top people. Otherwise, you're going to end up with half an hour of, let's face it, boredom, and people are going to be on their phones, which is the worst. I mean, that's no way to fight. You know, people are going to be tweeting, say, yeah, I'm sat in this panel, but really I'm just waiting for the next one. So I think having a panel at SDCC can really work in your favor if you've got the right people on the panel. I mean, would you agree with that, Alyssa?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember in 2010 when Robert Downey Jr. Came out with the first, and I think that's the classic example of how to do MCU. How MCU did it right was they had the charismatic character to come out and introduce it. Of course, Joss, you know, that
yeah.
That's, you know, that just makes it all of us geeks, you know, really beside the point. Regardless, that is how to do it right. The thing that gets me is, and I agree with you about the smaller panels, but the thing that gets me are the larger panels, and I'm thinking primarily about the DC universe, where they came out and they introduced the Warner Brothers. It came out and introduced, oh my God, fabulous shows. Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Superman, you know, v Batman, and all of those. And they all seem to kind of fall flat.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the other thing. And I'm excited to see Wonder Woman, but what I'm hearing from the set is not good. And everybody was very interested in the BV Superman, yet it doesn't have that same kind of, it has that excitement. And they certainly did the production in Hall H this year, which was with the wraparound, which was brilliant. I'm a bit jaded about their ability to follow through and put out a good product. Now, how does that translate to the smaller movies that are coming out this next year? I'm not sure. You know, I'm not sure. The lesser knowns, not the Marvel universe, and not the DC universe. But I think it inherently it's a good thing to get the movie out there, and not even necessarily to build the buzz, but just to get it on people's radar, so people can say, yeah, I heard about that and that sounds interesting. I'll take a look at the trailers when they come out, you know, so that it's kind of more, but they have to follow through with it in a real way.
Do you know what? You saying that, the perfect example of that is Kong Skull Island, because obviously it had a panel this year. There was no footage shown as far as I'm aware. However, they came out with a trailer, 3 weeks ago, and it blew everybody away. So clearly they are following through in their thinking of, okay, we're going to turn up. We've got nothing to show them, but we're going to have somebody there who can talk the talk, you know, and then when that trailer comes out, everybody will go, yeah, no, I saw them at San Diego, and they were really buzzing about it, and that trailer buzzes as well. So I think what you're saying there, Alyssa, is completely right, is that if you've got somebody who can pull through on it and deliver something like Kong Skull Island, then they are right in taking that little 30-minute slot.
Leonard has a question. Think of what films the grammar here is a little wacky. What films do you think should have been at San Diego Comic-Con, but they never appeared? Correct me if I'm wrong, Leonard, in your question. So there was a movie or two last year that I kept thinking should be there. I mean, the classic example, I think, is D23 is, I'm anticipating no Marvel this year because D23 is the weekend before San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah.
So, so the Marvel, I mean, that's the big one. But in terms of some smaller movies, Michael P. just said, was Arrival at San Diego last year?
No, it wasn't. No, definitely not last year. I don't know if it was this year, but see, that's the type of film that, much like Interstellar, could really benefit from being at San Diego, because you've got Jeremy Renner, who we know can sell a film, Amy Adams, who, as we know, can sell a film. Every interview I see with Amy Adams, she's delightful, and I think she'd really benefit from obviously having center stage as well. But I mean, I don't think that's hurt Arrival by not being at San Diego, which is very positive. You know, all of a sudden that kind of exploded, didn't it, really?
I'm not really sure. A weird thing happened with Arrival at my local theater. I spoke with the theater manager. We have a seven screen theater in my small town in northern New Hampshire. I spoke with the theater manager, who about not getting Arrival. I had to drive an hour and a half to go see it. And he said that the booking agent refused to allow him to have Arrival in his theater because he was saying that it didn't work out with being so close to Thanksgiving. And he wanted to have Thanksgiving movies in place in place in the theater prior to the holiday. So my thinking is that there was some problem with the distribution of that movie, and they didn't get behind it here in the States. I think the way they got behind it in the UK. I'm interested. Do you happen to know the numbers that Arrival pulled in the UK? Did you hear?
Not offhand, I don't. But I mean, it was a pretty impressive debut, considering that it is a non-superhero, non-sequel, female-led film. I mean, all of that. You kind of think that's not going to hit the box office, but it did very well here, and all of the reviews were glowing. I mean, I'll be very surprised if it doesn't hit most of the people's end-of-year best of film lists as well. But I think you're right, Alyssa, is that most of the things that I saw, obviously, on Friends of CC forum, most of the people who had to drive miles to see it were utterly enthralled by it. But why did they have to drive that far? This is what I don't understand. It seems ridiculous. And I understand that these theatre managers want bums on seats, but at the same time, aren't you going to get that with something like Arrival, when it's getting all of this press? It kind of baffles me a little bit as to distribution, because you guys get a lot of stuff in theatres and it goes straight to our Netflix here. There's a weird distribution crossover between the UK and the US that never has any set pattern. But I guess that's the film industry. Distribution will never understand it.
So I'm reading from the Q&A. Leonard has chimed in, but that's the thing. Passengers and Arrival have done rather well in the UK, but did not showing at SDCC hurt their box office. And arguably, I have to agree with Leonard's driving that question home, because I think it did hurt Arrival. I think if there had been a bigger buzz about it, then the people who were doing the distributing would not have been able to marginalize it as much as they did in the States. Which is evidenced by the fact that it wasn't at my local theater. So I'm kind of agreeing with him there. Sartre P said, I don't think either movie was at SDCC and would have done the same. Michael P, no, but we could have spread the word and demanded that the film be shown locally.
Valid point. Very valid point. That I think the part of the problem with that is that, as you experienced, Alyssa, is that the theatre managers have already been told they're not allowed it. Whatever they do, they can't have it on their first run, so they can only have it on the second run, which obviously means I think it's 6 weeks after initial run. It certainly is here in the UK. So effectively, then the theatre is becoming a repertory theatre of showing secondary films,
Right.
which by that time, you're thinking, okay, something like Arrival, yes, you want to see on the big screen. It deserves to be on the scene on the big screen. But with other films, you kind of think, well, it's coming out on Blu-ray in 3 weeks. I'm just going to buy it on Blu-ray. It's easier. You know, I don't have to drive an hour and a half and pay the same price as getting the Blu-ray delivered from Amazon or from Target or anything else like that. So it's very difficult, I think. And I think certainly trying to get that film into theatres that are not allowed it, it's such a difficult task.
Let's see. Leonard is continuing to chime in. Arrival was the only film released at the same weekend. More than 100 prints. Yeah, he goes into some statistics. The reason I'm asking is if it hasn't hurt the box office, studios might think, why come to San Diego?
Yeah, valid point. It's a valid point, absolutely. And I think there has to be a real reason, as we've seen with Netflix, because let's not forget Netflix are a studio themselves, and them not being at San Diego has not hurt them at all. You know, they're throwing out their own stuff. It's working. It's winning awards. Why should they come and sell stuff? It's difficult.
I have to, Netflix is showing up at New York Comic-Con.
Okay.
And it's, Man in a High Castle, I think is kind of a good example, because the Marvel Netflix is a little bit, MCU is kind of just, they're in their own world, and I think anything they produce is going to be good and everybody's going to love it. But Man in the High Castle is a little bit different because it doesn't have that background and that history to it. They did a panel and a couple of shows, VR experiences at New York Comic-Con that were quite good and kept it prominent. I tend to think that, that Netflix is just trying to get into the con market, in my opinion, and it's not so much a decision about whether or not they should or they shouldn't. They just haven't had the bandwidth to do it prior to this point. So I think we're going to end up seeing more and more Netflix, and they perhaps are not the better example. Michael P says Luke Cage was awesome. Yeah, Marvel Netflix was the best panel this year at SDCC. Man in the High Castle is Amazon. Mike Leventhal says yes, right. I'm saying, but Netflix, Man in the High Castle was on Amazon and not on Netflix, right? Good point. Good point. Okay. Well, oops, sorry.
but going back to your point about having Netflix turn up, I mean, you have somebody like Idris Elba with his film. Hang on, I've written it down. Hang on, Beasts of No Nation, which made by Netflix. I believe it got maybe a small theatrical release in the US. I'm not quite sure. It didn't here in the UK. It went straight to Netflix. Now, that's the type of thing I would expect to see at San Diego, because yes, okay, it deals with a very real subject, but it's on the same level, I think, as Snowden. And you've got a very charismatic person in Idris Elba. He's also going to probably end up talking about the Marvel universe. So why don't Netflix turn up and say, hey, we've got, Idris Elba, one of the best actors in the world at the moment. He's here to promote Beasts of No Nation, but he'll probably take a few questions about Marvel as well. That's the perfect in for them. And it won awards. It's a great film. But much like Leonard said, possibly they could have got more from it. This is a film that people would watch because Idris is in it. And yes, the subject is tough, but Idris is in it, and it's Netflix, and you think, well, there's a quality to that. And we saw 15 minutes or whatever it was at San Diego, so let's take a chance on it.
Speaking of Netflix, they just debuted a new show last Friday called 3.5%. And I'll go into that later on, but they are doing some kind of really innovative shows in the sci-fi genres, which is pretty cool.
I like the fact that Netflix and Amazon are taking chances. They're taking chances, and the big Hollywood studios are not. And I think what we've seen, and this is going to form a basis of what I'm going to say at the end of the year, is that for this year, for 2016, comic-based movies, superhero-based movies have really let the nerd community down this year. Really let them down. I mean, Doctor Strange has done big numbers. Civil War did big numbers. Okay, yeah, fine. But for that's small. You look at the rest of the stuff, and I think it's been a very poor year for it. And I think real filmmaking has come back in this year. So maybe that's what needs to happen at San Diego, is Hollywood studios, to have a bit more of a steel backbone to say, right, we're actually going to do something at San Diego. We're actually going to promote a film that isn't comic-based, because the tide is turning. Whether the tide's turning or not, I don't know, but it does seem that this year has been pretty average compared to previous years. So maybe now is the time for these studios to jump in.
You echo what the executive producer of The Expanse said in a press room for the show in October. Basically, the superhero genre has sucked up all of the sci-fi air, and maybe it's time for some actual space-based science fiction shows like Arrival.
Yeah.
Which, granted, wasn't space-based, but it kind of was.
Yeah.
At least it was with aliens. And yes, I know Superman is an alien. Obviously, I got that. But I think that there are shows out there that are dealing with this, like The Expanse, like Dark Matter, like Killjoys. 3.5% is also another Netflix movie series that's on, which is dealing with it. So I think that you've tapped into something with the superhero genre kind of sucking the air out of all of the other sci-fi shows, which hopefully we'll get to see more of in the future.
I agree. Yeah, I completely agree. I think if real filmmaking is making a comeback, then it's going to be all the better for it. Because the thing is, comic book movies are already very high. They're already they're not going to drop down. But real filmmaking has taken a toll, I think. And as you said, Alyssa, it's been sucked up by these comic book movies, which has been great for the past few years. But all of a sudden, you kind of want something different. It's kind of like having hamburgers every day. And yet by the end of the week, you kind of think, actually, you know what? I just want a salad. That's all I want. It's just a salad. And you go and see something like Arrival, and you think, this is what I've been missing: real storytelling, real acting, with and what do you know? What obviously going back to my Amy Adams point is that being led by a female. This is why everybody's so excited by Wonder Woman. It's the first one. Why have Marvel held out, and yet DC, who have not particularly set the comic book film industry alight over the past few years, have now all of a sudden gone, right, get it out there? That's another interesting.
Don't get into the controversy about Black Widow and action figures.
Yes.
Just don't do it. We're not going to go there. Okay. Even though Black Friday was, a couple of days ago, just to catch up before we move on to Black Friday talking, just to catch up on the Q&A, Mark from Leonard, Mark is the guy that was more than happy to have non-comic book stuff at Comic-Con, like Glee.
Listen, I used to like Glee. It went off the rails about season 4, but I used to like Glee. If it had been there, I'd have been at the panel, okay?
Just I had to get that in there.
No, that's fine.
Aaron says Silver Surfer equals sci-fi and superhero. I would love a Silver Surfer. I got to admit that, you know, I really enjoyed the metaphysical aspects of Doctor Strange and would really enjoy the Silver Surfer stuff. It just a little bit more, you know, out there kind of stuff. Bring back Stargate Universe, says Graham Small. Yeah, I think, didn't that just, I think somebody had an option on Stargate Universe, bring a Stargate show, and that just died recently, if I recall correctly. I think this is information I heard this week or so. Sartre P, it's about geekdom. The non-comic based movies have Sundance and film festivals. I don't see Doctor Strange being shown at any of those festivals, at film festivals.
Good point.
Well, yeah, but Arrival could have been, because it was good enough.
Arrival was first screened in the UK at the London Film Festival.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first place it was screened, and you've got to remember, this is, you know, it's a very prestigious film festival. It was on the, I saw it on the same day as Birth of a Nation, which obviously, you know, that's a huge film as well. So it was, it did get a big push here, and I think that's why it's reflected well in numbers. But as you said, in the US, it should have been at some of these film festivals. It should have been getting the buzz built up, you know, not just Sundance. Let's go further afield. Let's do other ones.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, it was a quality script. And while, you know, while I enjoy the writing of the MCU shows, it doesn't have that gravitas that Arrival does with the script writing and the directing. Let's see. Glee season 4 was where things got almost got good again, but after Corey's death, the show was okay. I'm not a Glee fan, so I'm clueless here. Okay,
all of a sudden this is becoming a Glee hangout because Leonard's not here.
We're moving on to Abraham Lincoln's take on vampires. From Aaron Nevis. They're doing a reboot of Dune. Have you heard anything about that?
No, nothing at all. But, you know, so many things get announced for a reboot that you kind of think, okay, fine. But how Dune is such a difficult thing. I mean, the original film is completely bonkers. And I kind of think, well, why would you even try and do it again? I know, obviously, they talk about unfilmable books, and some of it has been done, but maybe just leave the original where it is. I mean, Alejandro Jodorowsky tried to do it, and if anybody's seen that documentary, which I highly recommend, you can see why somebody of his stature, who is not the most commercial of directors, it will be said, struggled with it, and I would have thought he'd have been perfect.
Mm-hmm. I like the original Dune, the one, I forget who directed that, because it's the film credits say Alan Smithy on it, I think.
Are you saying the one with Kyle MacLachlan in it?
Yeah.
Maybe
I'm an odd one for liking that, but I as a standalone, I enjoyed that movie. Englishman agrees with you. Awesome documentary. David Lynch, Graham Small, There Can Only Be One. Highlander should not be rebooted.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah.
So did you buy any DVDs for Black Friday?
Sadly not. And the thing is, normally with Black Friday, it's great for DVDs. You know, I love it because it's the type of time when you think I can just load up with some of the stuff I've missed over the years. Especially sometimes they have like this classic stuff as well, which is great. But this year, I was looking on the UK and the US site, and I thought it was really poor. Very, very poor. The first time in maybe 5 or 6 years where I just thought, there is nothing here. Nothing at all. It was, I can tell you now on one hand, it was the Friends box set, the James Bond box set, the Star Wars box set, a couple of Star Trek things, and something else. That was it all the way through the week. There was nothing else. I was so disappointed. And I kept thinking, is it me who's not seeing these great deals and everybody else is? But no, very disappointed, Alyssa. Didn't get one single DVD from Black Friday.
The ones that were, a couple tempted me. I did pick up the season 1 of Expanse because that's a show that's worth rewatching. Passed on Killjoy season 1 for the same price at $17.50. I was looking at a couple of box sets for Spielberg, and a couple of those, just the classic movies. Ended up not pulling the trigger because the prices weren't fabulous on the movies for the Black Friday deals. Not like they've been in years past. I mean, it would have been nice if they had been like a first, all of the MCU movies, they had boxed those all together and offered them at $30, $29.99. and kind of thing, but there weren't those kinds of deals out there. How was the Black Friday shopping over in the UK? Do you think a lot of people went?
No, absolutely not. This is the first year where I think people have taken against it. There was a lot of negativity towards it on social media this year. I think because last year and the year before, we saw people fighting in the shops to get a TV that was reduced by $20 or $30. It was utterly pointless. And I think people just rebelled against it this year and said, no, we're not doing it. And also there was a lot of people saying, look, it's an American tradition. It's not a British tradition. So why have we got it? Which obviously is a very valid point at the same time. But as we always know, what you Americans have, we British have to have. And what we British have, you Americans have to have. So, it's always going to cross over. But there was a lot of negativity towards it on social media, and I don't really know anybody who bought anything at all. I saw photos of supermarkets just completely deserted with TVs stacked high. I mean, that would not have happened 2 years ago.
Wow. Here in the States, I have to say that's what I saw in the local brick and mortar stores. And it seemed as though that the deals online were also available for longer periods of time. So there'd be a deal on an iPad or something, some electronic, really good price on some hot electronic, and it would still be there 12 hours later. So which was very, very surprising to me. I did go out shopping on Black Friday. I went out at about 6 a.m. and to probably about a dozen, half dozen stores, just clothing stores, to pick up socks for relatives and smart wool socks and, those kinds of smaller items. And everybody to a store was saying that it was dead in the stores. Now, granted, I'm in a smaller area, but we still are in an outlet shopping area, and it did seem to pick up at around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But in general, it seems, I think that what's happened, at least in the States, is that they started messing with the times, and everybody was all programmed to go out and buy on Friday morning, and they messed with the times, and they started making it Black Friday week. And then they started making it on, opening on Thanksgiving, and everybody just said, screw it, not going to go.
Yeah.
So that's my theory. That's my theory about Black Friday. That said, there are a couple of things. Funko box for the geeks out there. Funko box subscribers, you can get past boxes for $15 until November 29th. And even if you've let your subscription lapse, you can still re-up your subscription and get more boxes, because we all need more pops. Yeah. CNBC did a great holiday geek list too, where they featured actually Tony Kim, Crazy for Comic-Con, with his clothing line, got featured by CNBC this past week, which was really neat. They've also got some other links to other things. This is all on the Friends of CC thread, titled in the off-topic chat area, titled it's that time of the year again, shopping season. And so they've got a bunch of geek deals in there. So Skybound is doing a Black Friday sale of $5 t-shirts. George Martin talking plush was available. Yeah, because we all need more plushies and pops. It's like crazy. Marvel Unlimited Plus, which is a service where you can download 12 comics to your iPad, which is a subscription service. It's about $100 a year. They, I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but with the code Strange, you can get their annual membership for $60. This is the subscription service that allows you access to the Marvel Unlimited Plus panels at San Diego and New York Comic-Con. So every year they have a special panel for those members. And sometimes, like at New York Comic-Con this past October, I was able to rewatch the Iron Fist footage at the Marvel Unlimited Plus panel. And so it's a fun little thing. If you're interested and you read comics on your iPad. Let's see. I think that's kind of about it. There was a couple of other things that were out there, but nothing, as you said, Mark, nothing huge that was over there. What did you get? You must have gotten something.
Well, yeah, of course. I had to buy something. It was only right to buy something. I bought a pair of winter boots, basically. I'd been looking for some winter boots and sat here on the computer waiting for it to go live and thinking, okay, I've got the price in my head. If it's that or lower, I'm going to get it. Sure enough, it came up and it was £5 lower. I was like, quick, buy now. Bought it. And then I thought, about an hour later, I'll have a look to see how it's doing. There was still about 80% of the stock available. So I could have, much like you were saying, Alyssa, people are just taking their time now. I don't think people are sat there at the computer anymore.
Yeah. Leonard says, I haven't seen the usual Black Friday fight scenes from the States this year. Sam, let's see. They spread the deals. Scott said they spread the deals out this year, pre-Black Friday sales and online. Scott also said the GameStop mystery box. I missed that one.
It seems to be that you had to dig around for these deals. I mean, there's you were saying about these ones that obviously people have posted on the forum, but these are ones that people have had to dig around for. They've not been easy to find, which I find very strange, considering that it's the biggest shopping day before Christmas, apparently, and yet we're having to scratch around for these deals. What's changed? I don't know.
And corporations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of corporations, I found the link. The Week in Television.
What a brilliant segue that is, Alyssa. What a brilliant segue.
Well, Incorporated. Have you, did you get a chance did you get the press release for Incorporated at all?
No.
Okay. No. One of my writers, Transmute, was able to watch the first 5 episodes for it and did a write-up on it. It's a pretty interesting new show. It airs on Wednesday. This week is the first one. It's on the Sci-Fi Channel. So they're coming out with some non-superhero based, just to tie into our earlier conversation, non-superhero based shows, the Sci-Fi Channel, they're really kind of actually becoming the science fiction channel again, which is nice to see. Let's see, did you have any questions?
Yeah, it's obviously over here in the UK, we don't get most stuff at the same time as you, unless it's Game of Thrones or one of these huge shows. But one thing that we've got here at the moment, I haven't started watching it yet, and I know you're building it up on your DVR, Alyssa, is The Exorcist. Now, obviously, The Exorcist, the film, is one of the greatest horror films of all time. And I think it hadn't started when I was on the Hangout last, but I was asking a few people if anybody had seen anything at San Diego Comic-Con. Nobody had been to see the panel. If anybody had seen the first episode, nobody had seen it. So I'm just wondering if anybody started to watch it, what they think to it. I've heard some actually respectable reviews of it. So I'm kind of interested as to, are they building their own path, or are they still sticking to, obviously, the original film and possibly parts of Blatty's other books? But yeah, I'm kind of interested to know what people are thinking of this, if anybody's watching it.
I just saw the first episode, and I was impressed enough to keep them on my DVR, keeping the season pass going for it. And I really did like it. I'm not a big fan of the Exorcist movie. And I've seen a couple of people post about it who've watched it continuously and really seem to enjoy it. So, I'd say when you get a chance to just start watching it, because it had that. It was shot, I believe it was shot in Brazil.
Oh.
Or, the first episode was actually shot on scene in a different country. And you really had that feeling of it. It wasn't just the Hollywood back lot going to portray a third world country, ghetto zone, which has really impressed me. It's in a similar way, like this 3.5% show has also done, because it's shot on location by the local talent. Yes, the 3.5% movie TV show has got a lot of subtitles, which I don't mind for a movie, but for a series is a little tiresome, because I have to pay attention. I have to actually watch the screen, which means I can't be on my computer. So that may be my biggest stumbling point to that to the 3.5%. But yeah, The Exorcist was a good one. A good show. I think
what we're seeing as well, Alyssa, is the change now from 24, 22 episodes down to 10 or 12, which really helps a TV show. It really does, because if you're much like yourself, you're building stuff up and you think there's only 10 episodes. Oh, yeah, it's fine. I'll burn through it. It's no problem. You'll probably continue to watch it. So I think that the tide certainly turning like that has helped a lot of new shows.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Just to give people an idea about Incorporated, it's set in the post-climate change America, with the dual societies of the haves that live in the green zone and the have-nots, which live in the red zone. Incorporated follows an anti-hero in the green zone. So in the corporate area, which is the green zone, it follows this anti-hero who is not apparently not one of the nicer people you'll ever encounter. And as he tries to find his mate from years ago. So it's an interesting thing. The other show that's coming back this week is Vikings. Do you follow that show?
Do you know what? I don't, and it's shown here in the UK. And when I was in San Diego last year, the cast of Vikings stayed at the same hotel as us. I mean, I didn't see them. I think you'd probably know if you got into a lift with muscle-bound men. But I believe a lot of people did see them. So I know it's quite popular as well, but I don't watch it.
Mm-hmm. What shows do you watch?
Oh, blimey, that's a good question. We're watching Westworld. Obviously, I think everybody in the world is watching Westworld. The Strain, I love The Strain. You know, anything by Del Toro, I'm there, so that's fine. I'm trying to think what else. BoJack Horseman, of course. You know, he was quite popular in the 90s at a TV show. I'm trying to think what else. You've really put me on the spot now. I have so much, and now I'm trying to think. Do you know what? One show, actually, which you pointed me in the direction of, Alyssa, and they started showing it here in the UK, and I have the whole season. Haven't started. Winona Earp.
Wyatt Earp. Yeah, Winona, right. Earp.
Yeah, haven't started watching it, but I saw the trailer after you'd mentioned it starting in the US and thought, yeah, this kind of looks interesting. So I've been recording that. So I'm looking forward to starting it, really.
It's got a good following. Have you, did you catch at all Good Behavior, People of the Earth, Dirk Gently?
Dirk Gently starts December over here.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the things that we've seen the big word coming out of the US. So I think obviously people who are aware of it already are kind of waiting for that. But yeah, that's going straight to Netflix here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
See, another thing of those, you know, you've got it on one of your networks and yet we get it straight on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, distribution deals, how do they work?
Okay, I'm going to just continue. I'm going to read the last bit of comments. And let's see. Oh boy, there's a few comments here that I missed. Let's see, a lot of horror people. The Exorcist is good, says Scott Angus, I believe.
It's nice when you hear of a show turning up and being very good.
There is a segue into the original.
Ah, okay.
Which Graham Small says, and I believe that he's talking about The Exorcist.
Excellent.
But it is following its own path pretty much.
That's what I'd heard, and I'd heard that it is doing very well on its own path.
Sense8, Scott and Michael P says Sense8. TV is so good these days.
TV is too good. TV is too good. That's the problem. You know, somebody says to you, have you seen this show? And you say no. And they say, why haven't you seen it? It's like, I have no time. I already have my own shows. I can't add another show. I have no time. I have to go to work.
Yes. And watch movies and do reviews.
Exactly. This is the thing, you know. There's only so many hours in a day.
Graham Small recommends The Travelers. A Michael P again with Expanse. I'm loving Good Behavior, says Graham Small. That's with the older daughter from Downton Abbey. If you're not familiar with that show, Mike.
What, Downton Abbey? Oh, I'm very familiar with that one, Alyssa. Oh yeah, absolutely.
But the older daughter is on Good Behavior.
Michelle Doherty, is it?
Yeah, Doherty. Yeah. And she plays a drug addict.
Oh, okay. That's a very big change from being Lady Crawley. Wow.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And she kills it. She's great. she's really good. And the writing is good too. That's why I watch it every week when it comes on. I watch it live. I don't let that one stack up. And so, let's see, the platinum age of television, says Michael P. And Karen Sessions says the amount of contact may be reaching a tipping point.
Oh, good point. Very good point. Yes. Yes.
It will be interesting to see where television is in a couple of years. Because I wonder how much advertising dollar can support television.
Yeah. I think this is the thing, isn't it? That you have the network shows that are relying on these advert money. And yet what happens when these shows are pulled? And then you have somebody like HBO or somebody like Amazon, somebody like Netflix, who doesn't rely on advertising. It relies on subscription. Now, how far does that take you? You know, I mean, HBO are never going to overstretch themselves because they know they've been doing it for decades. But do we see Netflix and Amazon stretching themselves too far and suddenly ending up in the red year on year, like a lot of these Hollywood studios do?
They have to rely primarily on sports.
Yeah. The number that, you know, the amount of money that is spent on sports, as in buying the rights to sports, is astronomical. You know, it far outweighs any money that Marvel will bring in 1 year or Disney will bring in 1 year. It's ridiculous. So it's great that we've got all this content, but as you said, Alyssa, where does it go in 2 years?
I think we're going to wrap up for the day on that note, and thank everybody for watching. The Patreon, I do want to just put in a plug here to help support the show. And Leonard will hopefully be back next week so he can do this himself and point everybody to the right page. But the Englishman in San Diego does have a Patreon page, and we would indeed appreciate any and all support. I believe there are various rewards available, and he will say more about that next week. And where can people find you, Mark?
You can find me on Twitter at Mark_Searby, where I tweet all of my usual rubbish. I have a little website, marksearby.com. Every Thursday evening here in the UK, I'm on the Anglian radio station network reviewing the week's films obviously in theatres and on DVD and on TV. And you know, now it's coming up to Christmas films as well. And then I retweet the link so you can listen again over the weekend as well. So if you're following me on Twitter or whatever else, you can hear those. It takes out all of the great music that they play and you just hear me. I think that's great personally, but hey, that's it. And obviously on Friends of CC forum as well. I'm on there. So yeah, that's me. So Alyssa, where can people find you?
on the forum. You just bring to mind, first off, I want to say thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure today, and hopefully Leonard will be feeling less ill next week and be able to join us. You brought an interesting question that I just thought of, so I'm going to kind of segue here for a moment. It's very interesting to me that there's a science fiction movie with the lead actor from Guardians of the Galaxy that's premiering the same week as Rogue One. So we've got a choice here in the States on the 16th, I believe, is when Rogue One comes up as to which science fiction movie to go to.
Well, you've got the choice there, Alyssa. You've got, obviously, you know, Star Wars, great, Rogue One, or you can go and see Passengers with a half-naked Chris Pratt and a half-naked Jennifer Lawrence. So, hey, choose wisely is what we will say, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Because, you know, being a red-blooded American woman, I do enjoy the half-naked male point. As I turn 5 shades of red. On that note, people can find me on the Friends of CC forum /forum, and my Twitter handle is at Friends of CCI. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice week.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye. We'll see you next week.